All right, thanking God again. Let's call Ezekiel chapter 4 unclean. For the way Ezekiel is going to be told to prepare his food during the next set of ordeals or demonstrative exercises. It's a preacher term or teacher term I use. The next set of demonstrative exercises God is going to use Ezekiel to communicate to the exiles in Babylon, as he's going to seem to give him a deed that may be comprised of or may consist of, three separate deeds. First of all, to build a model. That part's not so hard, but the next part is to lay on his side. Which side is it first? The left side, representing the siege or the captivity of Jerusalem for 390 days, understanding that there are 360 days in the Hebrew calendar at this time, I believe. He's going to additionally tell him to flip on his right side for another 40 days, each of those days for the children of Israel and the children of Judah to represent the number of years each will spend in captivity. The last section of the chapter, I didn't break it down yet, but the model building goes from verses 1 through 3. The line on the sides, the left side for Israel and the right side for Judah, will go from verses 4 through 8. And in the final section, we'll talk about his meal prep during his days of representing the siege from verses 9 through the end of the chapter. It looks like verse 17. He is going to say, cook modest, if not small amounts of bread, along with modest or small amounts of water. The catch, cook your food over human dung. Represent the unclean way that they will be eating or taking their food during the years of their captivity. To which Ezekiel, understandably, in my paraphrase, says, please, God. To which God's going to say, okay, cow's dung. And so with that compromise, he is going to send Ezekiel off to represent the way in which the children of Israel are going to go into captivity. Both houses, 390 days for the 390 years of captivity for Israel, and 40 days representing, as we mentioned, the 40 years of captivity for Judah. The thing that stood out to me quite possibly most in this chapter being the nonchalant way God tells his servant. He's just the middleman, the messenger. He's not even the greatest sinner in Israel. But he is the one God seemingly nonchalantly tells to cook his food over human dung as a sign to the people of Israel, at least to the exiles. Helping me to understand this, God willing, he opened my eyes to see a little bit different perspective on what Jesus said or what Jesus warned when he said, be careful of straining at the gnat while being willing to swallow a camel. Understanding as offensive as cooking over human doo-doo seems to us, we can lose track of the way in which things like injustice and exploitation and dishonesty might bring up a similar stench to God in the spiritual realm. And so just because our spiritual senses aren't as offended by all of those things does not mean that our commitment to doing all kinds of shady things doesn't make our presence when we're doing shady things a perpetual stench to God in the spiritual realms. Understanding it from that perspective, it helps me to understand why a God who is living around the perpetual stench of shady ways might consider it nothing to tell a man to do something that stinks small by comparison, if he was able to perceive the spiritual stench that he was living around day after day. The kind of stench that to God, possibly, quite possibly, might have made the stench of cooking over human dung small by comparison. Also, quite possibly, helping Ezekiel and helping us understand the condemnation to come.